The truly evil human experiments. Number 1. Human vivisection. Before you scroll away, you need to hear this. This really happened. Not centuries ago. Not in some dark myth. It happened in the modern world. In real laboratories. By real doctors. This is the story of human vivisection. The word sounds cold, technical, almost harmless. But it isn't. Human vivisection means cutting into a living person for experimentation. Not to heal. Not to save. Only to observe. In the early 20th century, especially during war, science was given unchecked power. And when power has no limits, ethics disappear first. During World War II, one place became infamous: Japan's Unit 731. On paper, a research facility. In reality, a nightmare. Prisoners, men, women, even children, were treated as data. Doctors cut into living bodies to study organs, to watch disease spread, to measure how much pain a human could endure. No anesthesia. No consent. No survival. A single lamp swings above a cold metal table, casting long shadows across faces that will never see daylight again. That was their world. The justification was chilling. Pain would ruin the results. So pain was ignored. And this wasn't isolated. Across the world, in Nazi concentration camps, prisoners were subjected to deadly experiments in the name of ideology and science. But here's what we rarely talk about. Even in America, the land of freedom, there were shadows. The Tuskegee study. Radiation experiments on unsuspecting citizens. Unethical research hidden behind closed doors. Because the hardest truth is this: the people doing this weren't hiding in darkness. They were educated, respected, trusted with human lives. They wore white coats. They had degrees. They believed they were doing important work. When the war ended, the truth surfaced. From these atrocities came the Nuremberg Code, 10 principles that still guide medicine today. The first and most fundamental: no human experiment is ethical without voluntary, informed consent. Today, human vivisection is recognized as a crime against humanity. But the lesson isn't just history. History shows us this: when science loses empathy, when we dehumanize in the name of progress, knowledge becomes dangerous. If this story made you pause, don't let it end here. These aren't just dark chapters to forget, they're warnings we need to remember. Because forgetting the past is exactly how it repeats itself. That's why I dig into these hidden stories. If you want more truth that history tried to bury, you know what to do. Stay curious. Stay human. Number 2. Project 4.1. What if I told you the United States once ran a human experiment on families after a nuclear explosion without their consent? This isn't a conspiracy. This is Project 4.1. And it actually happened. And if they did it once, what makes you think they stopped? In 1954, during the height of the Cold War, the US detonated Castle Bravo, the most powerful nuclear bomb America has ever tested. It was supposed to be controlled. Instead, it exploded with 15 megatons of force, 1,000 times more powerful than what they predicted. Radioactive fallout didn't stay over the ocean. It drifted, silently, onto nearby islands in the Marshall Islands, where people were sleeping, where children were playing, where families had no warning. White ash fell from the sky. They thought it was snow. Soon, people began losing their hair. Their skin burned. Children became violently ill. But instead of evacuating them immediately, US scientists arrived, with clipboards. The islanders weren't told the truth. They weren't asked for consent. Buried in declassified documents, 3 words appear: Project 4.1. A study of how human beings respond to nuclear fallout. Translation: they weren't patients. They were lab rats. Doctors tracked radiation burns, measured tumors, documented miscarriages. Women later gave birth to infants born without skeletons, without features, barely human. Survivors called them jellyfish babies. One survivor later said, "They treated us like we were already dead." Internal US documents described the tragedy as a unique research opportunity. Project 4.1 was buried under Cold War secrecy, classified until 1994. And even after declassification, the US government never apologized. No one was prosecuted, labeled as medical follow-up, kept out of textbooks, kept away from accountability. For decades, the victims were never told they were part of an experiment. This wasn't an enemy nation. This wasn't a battlefield. These were civilians, used to answer a scientific question. So here's the uncomfortable truth. When power goes unchecked, human lives become expendable. And Project 4.1 proves it. If this shocked you, wait until you learn how many more experiments were hidden in plain sight. Number 3. Unit 731. What you're about to hear was hidden longer than most war crimes. Not because it was unproven, but because it was useful. During World War II, there was a place where doctors didn't heal, they experimented on living people. And the world let them walk free. This was Unit 731. In the late 1930s, deep in Japanese-occupied Manchuria, near the frozen city of Harbin, a secret military complex was built. Officially, it studied water purification and epidemic prevention. Unofficially, it became one of the darkest laboratories in human history. The man behind it was Lieutenant General Shiro Ishii, a microbiologist, a nationalist, and a man who believed Japan's future depended on mastering biological warfare. Inside Unit 731, prisoners weren't called people. They were called maryuta. Logs. Wood to be cut open. Used. Disposed of. Men. Women. Children. Chinese civilians. Soviet prisoners. Korean dissidents. At least 3,000 people. Maybe more. The records were burned. What happened inside those walls wasn't medicine. It was curiosity without conscience. Doctors performed surgeries without anesthesia, watching what the human body does when pushed beyond its limits. They studied how disease spreads by infecting prisoners with plague, cholera, anthrax, and documenting every stage until death. Limbs were frozen solid in sub-zero chambers, then thawed to understand frostbite. Others were locked in pressure rooms until their bodies gave out. And it didn't stay inside the compound. Villages were used as testing grounds. Plague-infested fleas were dropped from planes. Contaminated water was released into wells. Entire communities were monitored to see how fast death would spread. No consent. No mercy. No survivors to tell the story. When the war ended in 1945, you'd expect trials. Executions. Justice. The Nazis faced Nuremberg. Their doctors were hanged. But the scientists of Unit 731, many of them walked free. Not because Japan protected them, but because the United States made a deal. American intelligence wanted the data. Thousands of pages of research on biological weapons, human endurance, and infectious disease. Information no other nation had, because no other nation had gone that far. So immunity was granted. In exchange for silence. Shiro Ishii was never charged. He died peacefully in 1959. Some of his colleagues became university professors, medical researchers, executives in Japan's pharmaceutical industry. Their victims were buried in unmarked graves, if they were buried at all. Data? It became part of America's own biological weapons program. And Unit 731 wasn't alone. The Nazis did it in Europe. The United States did it with the Tuskegee experiments. With radiation tests on unwitting citizens. With MKUltra. With Project 4.1 in the Marshall Islands. Different flags. Different decades. Same idea. When fear rises, ethics disappear. And when the war ends, the powerful decide what gets remembered. History likes to call these moments mistakes. But mistakes don't require secrecy. Or silence. Or immunity deals. Unit 731 wasn't an accident. It was a decision. Made by people who knew exactly what they were doing. And the most dangerous part isn't that it happened once. It's that it proved how easily it can happen again. This is just the beginning. Next, we'll talk about what happened when American doctors did the same thing, to their own people. Subscribe. Because the truth didn't end here. It just learned how to hide.